we know, banks have always followed a balance sheet driven approach for lending or financing. Can you tell me a bit about why that doesn't work for SMEs today, and how are originators like 129 Knots addressing that challenge in their particular sector or industry?
Yes, indeed. When you're as a non-bank originator, 129 Knots is addressing the longer tail of the maritime energy sector and bringing financing to businesses that don't have the attractive balance sheets that banks would want to take risks. So we have to move from a relationship banking model to a transaction level financing model. And this is where expertise is the starting point. If you don't have the expertise, don't try to enter that space. Now, 129 Knots has been built by experts in the global maritime energy sector, which is huge. And this expertise is essential. Now, how can you scale this expertise? This is with technology, with automation. And this is where tribal knots makes a difference, because you are collecting the right data points from the transactions that are looking for financing, verifying those transactions, applying the appropriate credit underwriting process and compliance processes, and bringing this verifiable data to institutional investors as trusted insights for them to pick and choose the transactions they are able to finance. But again, I insist on the expertise in the global maritime energy that the 129 Knots is bringing, and you don't invent that. You have it, you have built it over more than a decade, and that is the starting point for tribal knots to exist, which is all about digitizing this expertise, collecting the right data, using distributed ledgers to prove that the data is tamper-proof, and is building a history of transactions in this industry, so that indeed the credit engine can be relying on current transaction data, but also historic transaction data. So it's really acting as a credit insurer in the market, but of course relying on balance sheets from third parties like credit insurers and liquidity from institutional investors. Now, what 129 Knots is basically delivering to the capital markets, institutional investors, is basically addressing the opacity and the complexity of this market. Indeed, you don't navigate into complex markets, risky markets, without expertise, and often non-bank lenders take the risk to enter specific segments that they can't indeed assess in the right way, and this is where fraud happens. We at 129 Knots, we definitely want to address the opacity issues, but we also want to deliver the verifiable data and transform this data. We don't share all the data, of course, but we transform this data into something that the institutional investors can trust. So that's how I see we're going to address the global trade finance gap by connecting capital markets with very specialized players at industry level or at geographic level.